Welcome to Behind the Smiles podcast, where we go beyond the surface while talking to labs and DSOs about everything your highlight reel doesn't show. If you're into stories, strategy, and a little bit of startup chaos, this one is for you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another new episode of Behind the Smiles podcast. So, today we have with us a very special guest, Shishir Khadke. Shishir is the founder of Denpulse, but also a practicing accountant. And we wanted to talk about the finances of the dental practices, the dental groups, and see where the conversation goes in terms of helping them grow their business and what they're not seeing today. Without further ado, Shishir, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks, Nipun, for having me.
Shishir, do you want to give a brief background to the audience who may not know you? What do you do? Talk about your kind of background and what led you to founding Denpulse.
Yes, I'm a chartered certified accountant by trade and qualified in 2007. And then until 2019, I worked with multiple sectors. And when I lost all my teeth in 2019 due to severe periodontal disease, when I had to see my dentist, and he started asking me lots of questions around dental accounting and finance. And over the 2 3 years, we formed a bond in terms of, because I had to go and visit him quite a lot. And then he became my first client. And that's how it all started. Then he introduced his brother-in-law and his friends. And by the time I knew, I had like 25, 30 clients. And because I still had to go and visit him quite often, then it's like like this a calling itself saying, maybe this is what you're meant to do, like so helping dental practices to build a financially stable business. So I lean much into working with dentists since then.
Great. And Shishir, when you talk to, I'm assuming you have other clients who are not dentists, non-dental kind
Yeah.
of industry owners or people from that industry as well. But what is the difference between an owner who has a dental practice versus any other industry that you see? Do you find any kind of different how the industry is different from other people?
In a broader sense, yes. But if you go into deeper level, then because we're still satisfying our human needs, and the owner is concerned about the take home pay. He's concerned about the what I'm going to get in 5 years time and what taxes I'm paying. So those information lives within yourself, regardless of which industry that you operate on. But from accounting challenges, every sector has its own nuances, 5 or 10% of them that needs to be tackled, and only expert of the expert in that area can handle that. So that is, that is. There's some differences and some from what you're trying to get from the business, but running the business as a vehicle for you is the same.
And Shishir, where do you see is the disconnect? So obviously, I think finance is finance. At the end of the day, you're still operating that as a, let's say, as a limited company or a company. But the peculiarities of dentistry is that there are a lot of clinical aspects or other things. So where do you see when you work with your clients, like what do you see as a disconnect today within dentistry that you see as a gap that you want to solve as a more where you find most of the discussions go when you're talking to your clients?
One of the biggest issues that I come across, Nipun, is that the dentist they works in different time scales. Like what I mean by this is a clinical work happens today, yeah, and the lab work for the bills that arrive in a couple of weeks' time, and it gets recorded in the zero QuickBooks accounting software, and bills get paid a month after something. But in between, there is associate pay needs to be calculated and paid on. And this is where the associate pay, like where does this fit in terms of what you're doing? And that's where the disconnect is. Like how do you make a decision for the information that hasn't fully arrived yet? That's where the disconnect is happening.
Okay. And is that, and how do dentists solve that? Like, I'm just trying to say, what's your solution for that time scale? Because I think I'm hearing the word for the first time in terms of time scale. We do understand that these treatments take time. What you're trying to say is that you see something, you see a patient today, but maybe the invoice arrives at a later stage, and then the pay has to be calculated for that month. So there is not all the things are very same day transactions, where you see a receipt and a payment which could be calculated. So I think, how's the solution? How are they solving this problem right now?
So, from my experience of working with dentists, whether they're individual practices or micro groups, they're not actually tracking the treatment at the granular level. It's more at the total level than at the granular level, and that's where this lack of information is. There's not a lack of data, Nipun, problem, but the lack of granular level tracking. That's where the issue is arising, and that's where they can improve on, so that they can have, for example, I'll give you a simple example. If you say the treatment has been performed, say today's date is what, the 29th of April. So that falls in the 29th of April in the month end. Uh, but if the lab bill is coming, say on the 16th of May, the lab cost is gone in the May month. The treatment happened in the April month. If you knew what you treatment when you've done it, so you actually accrue for the cost for in the month of April. That means you're aligning your sales in production you're recording for the month of April, and also the cost are in the same month, so that you're seeing the profitability in the right month. Otherwise, the April month is overstated with the revenue, and your cost for the May month is overstated. So this is misalignment. So you're looking at different months saying, "Why? I thought I made profit. I didn't make profit. I made profit, but it doesn't look like I made a profit."
Yeah. And when you talk to the owners and the let's say they may be owning multiple clinics, do they understand that problem, or you have to educate them? Like, because I think most of the dentists, like owners, could become the principal dentist, or it could be a finance person who operates, or an operator who is operating multiple clinics. Do they understand these nuances of the time scales that you're talking about?
As a finance person, they would, but as a dentist, they wouldn't care, go by this route. They would just say like, "Well, I've done the work, and where's my money? I want to see that in my bank account." That's when they start to see that they go more by collection rather than production. Nippons like, so I've done this treatment, I've got the money collected in the till. Like, where's my money? And I'm seeing that in my bank statement and the mobile banking. And that's how far generally they go.
Okay. Okay. And Shishir, when you're talking about, when you, I know that you do a lot of masterminds with a lot of dentists and dental group owners as well. So what do you talk to them about? So I'm just curious. Let us go into the, one of your masterminds, let's say. And a lot of people want to see what is my income, what is my spend. So visibility on income, spend, expenses, like what are they seeking at the end of the day? I'm assuming it's profitability for the business. But if you just, let's talk about what happens in a typical mastermind and how they are, what questions they are seeking answers for.
Yeah, so one thing that we do is like before we have a mastermind call, Nipun, that we ask them to list the challenges for the mastermind call, so that so that we are aware of it. And I'll give you an example. Typical the other day, the guy said, "Was it? I don't have any like specific frustration right now. However, I would like to improve the profitability of the business. Like I would like to improve the profit margins. Like in relation to increasing my production, my sales, but how do I keep my margin intact at least, or actually improve my margins?" So that's how we kind of operate in terms of the helping them to maximize profitability in the business and managing cash flow, so that they can build generation wealth by using the business as a vehicle. The most important part here is that you got to be aware of your finances, and there's a classic phrase that used by this guy, I can't remember the name, who runs the profit. He says like, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business.
And when it comes to numbers, Shishir, so obviously we are talking about income, then there is expenses. So I'm assuming that income is something that obviously they would have a lot of clarity on, because again, it could be a deferred income, or income that you can record as of today. When we talk about the spend, and I think we have had that chat previously as well, where the spend is happening and why it's happening. When it comes to, let's say, take an example of associate pay. So can you talk about what are the different systems that maybe a practice owner might be using today to capture the income, and maybe we go to the spend side of things and where the gaps are as of today in terms of visibility?
Yeah, so the income side can stay within the PMS only, because it's good as it gets, because it is a source of truth that associate does perform the work. This is what the treatment they have done. This is the production they have done, and that information is there. So all the software is out there, including us, Denpulse. We're pulling the information from PMS. So we're not reinventing the data; it's already there. And you can separate by the payer type, NHS, like membership and private, and you can do all kinds of that. And the cost and expenses are stored inside zero QuickBooks. And that's when you have income into one platform and then the cost and expense in another platform. So that's where the owners start to get frustrated, saying, well, I don't know, like, how I'm seeing my profit out of the business. That's the only thing that I care about, like how much profit I'm making. Otherwise, the money comes in and it's going out even more faster. Like, so in terms of recording this, so Zero is good for recording, and you can record the information at a granular level. For example, the clients that we come on board to join the masterminds, and they have the lab fees even by the associate as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can track it by the lab cost by the provider itself, and that is part of the associate pay. Associate pay, like your production, your split percentage, and your lab cost split percentage, and that is coming from zero accounting software, and that tells you broader look, like what your associate net pay looks like. Do that, but they will need to have a concrete somewhere as to see that information coming from both sides, and from one from PMS and one from an accounting software, so that they can see the profitability of the business in a deeper way.
Okay. And I think you talked about the lab side of
Mm.
expenses, and I think for associates, can you just walk us through, let's say if I'm looking at a pay slip, what are the things that associates care about, or what are the things that you use to calculate the net home take home salary, or let's say the pay for an associate?
Yeah, I'll quickly run down through the process. The first thing is obviously the production, and the split percentage is either like a flat percentage or you're in a sliding scale, so you can have that. And then your last split percent is usually 50%. I've seen Nippon, like very few, it's very few, like only 1%, 2%, who are also adapting, saying, hey, screw this 50%, 40%, 35%, this sliding scale thing. So I'm going to put you on salaries, but that's a dangerous territory to be in, because SMRC might claw back on this one, might not accept that one, but that technique cannot be employed. But coming back to the calculation itself, and then what's costing you to run the surgery itself, and that's important key metrics, and number of hours they worked, and the material spend. These are the variables that needs to be taken into account while you're calculating associate pay. And on top of that, if they have NHS and superannuation, things like that, also needs to be taken as a part of the associate pay calculation.
Okay. And when we speak to a lot of dentists or dental groups, the understanding is that there's a lot of admin work involved in terms of, I think, the income, the revenue is straightforward coming in from the PMS, but when the deductions have to be calculated, it's still old school the way they are capturing it. So what's your experience on that front?
Generally speaking, most of them they're still like in old school. That I've seen my clients, and sending their, hey, say, sending the like in WhatsApp.
What are they sending on WhatsApp, Shishir? What are they
They're
sending?
sending like the lab work on WhatsApp.
And they send it to the accountant. So, for example, for your firm, or they're sending it to the practice owner. Like who are they sending it to?
Yeah, well, saying, well, this is the invoice that I got from this, and this that. Uh, and also they're also sending to the lab technician as well, lab providers as well, saying like, okay, this is what I need to order. They're doing that as well. Like, you must be kidding me! Like, you're on WhatsApp on this, and like, oh my god, okay, how do you operate?
Yeah. So what are the complexities, Shishir, in this one? Obviously, WhatsApp is not a compliant system. Invoices should not be captured. The clinic owners would want to have everything centralized as well, rather than relying on memory or physically or manually keying in the data. So just trying to understand, like, what are the implications of doing it in this way? Because I think the reason I'm asking this question is that it works if you are a single practice. As you grow, it becomes more complex. So having that system and process and right tools in place is very important for the the practice owners or the business owners. So what's your understanding of that?
Yes, so running a single practice versus multi locations, and even when you're growing a Nippon, that's a challenge. And what I say to them, look, Matt, look, Chris, you're not running a lifestyle business anymore. So you got to take things seriously. You got to have proper process in place, like to run these things. And so uh, operating on WhatsApp is not an answer as a long-term solution. You got to have a portal where you can actually connect to different systems and operate from this one. For what I found, it's one we took a client. It's about 2 months ago, and we completely changed the way they operate the business now. And we found that the practice manager, she was on this side categorically on this part only, and they were spending like a 1.5 day a week. Just the data and the information were literally like everywhere, even on post-it notes, and so and then we set up this process like, well, we need to be systemize the process. So now they have this 1 day and half time back, like now it's just checking on chair time utilization and occupancy and how much chair I can recover, and like what is my operating cost per surgery per day, and what is my profit per chair per day, and where the gaps are. So spending time on those things and directing what the business should do rather than collecting all this data into different things. They're
So
even thinking of
so where
hiring
was the spending?
someone. Yes, they even thinking of hiring a second person to categorically help in this aspect. No, no, no. You don't have to. It's not a people problem. It's a process problem.
So, Shishir, when you're talking to these business owners and who bring you in to have a look at the process, because everything ties to profitability at the end of the day, there is one is how I can increase my revenue or how I can reduce my cost. Those are the only two levers that I can use. So, obviously, increasing their sales is something, marketing, customer service, referrals. Again, that's something. But I think in terms of the cost optimization, it's the processes and system. How aware are they in terms of the leaks that are happening in inefficient systems, processes that they have, and at what point does it become a problem for them? Like I'm just trying to think, a one
Yeah,
clinic owner versus a three clinics owner.
yeah. So the first thing that we do when we take client on board Nipun is we benchmark the business against our top performance, and the national average, is good. But where we go can be better is what I call cash system. Number one is we are looking at the structure of the business. Is it NHS? Is it mixed? Is it private? And that's one thing we're looking at. The number two is we're looking at the stage of the business. It is like a mature business, it's a startup, it is growing, because every business has different pains, and different threshold they where they can absorb the level of expenses to run the business. And then with the third thing we look at is the size of the business. Because a business running at say 800,000 production wise, revenue wise, versus 1.8 million, and it is different because both are going through the same challenges, because their operating expenses has already gone off from when they were 400,000 to 800,000 pounds. From what I've seen, from 800,000 to 1.5 million, the expense will not go up proportionally as the revenue grows. This is where the sweet spot. Whereas from 1.6, 1.8, again, they have to have more people, have bigger office and bigger things, and they have to have more operating expenses. So the first thing that we do is we benchmark the business based on three ES criteria in the portal. And we look at the net profit margin, saying, well, if you are on 10%, if you are on 10%, well, our best client is doing at, say, at 19%, you can get that 9% back. And if you're talking about, say, a million pound business, we had 10%, 100,000 pound net profit, and you're getting a 9%, we were talking about additional 90,000 pounds. And I said to the client, like, well, you'd have to go through your next financial year round clock around the sun to have another £1 million as a revenue, so that you can have another £100,000. Well, you could have it today in the next few months, because you just need to focus on a few drivers that actually drive the profitability of the business.
And do you think, Shishir, is payroll one of the biggest cost factors? for like payroll and associate pay, of course, right? Is that the biggest cost factor that kind of plays the margin?
Yes, they play a huge percentage on the profit of the business, but I would not call them a cost. I never call them a cost. For me, these are strategic assets for the business, because you can't run a business without having staff. Obviously, you need to be an optimum level. You have productivity, you want to have that. But staff, I believe, are one of the biggest assets that a dental practice can have. And same thing with associates. If they're not performing the treatments, patient, they are not going to pay you. So yes, there are elements of what you pay, and things like like office admin and even accounting, and I call level one, in like just doing compiling information for to file to HMRC. That is cost involved. You got to do something, but it's not adding value to the business in terms of driving profit out of the business. That's a cost. But if that gets into, say, well, now you have level two, which is reporting element from accounting finance professional. Now you're going somewhere because you're getting reports like what happened in my business. That's good. But where you can go deeper is level three, is that not only getting reporting, you're also getting like actions saying this is what you need to do next. Say if you can reduce your by 5%, you're adding an 80 pound per clinic, sorry, per chair per day basis, and you're adding another 400 pounds. I'm just making up the figures, but I'm giving an idea. So, but you got to look this at a holistic point of view. But I would call them the associates and staff. Although they are the big portions of what you pay from the business, I call them like big assets.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, I meant from that aspect as well. But I think what you touched on correctly was that it's not about reducing the the humans in there, but I think optimizing how they are being used. And I think a lot of times we see that they're spending a lot of time, including dentists as well, right? They're spending a lot of time on admin things, which,
Yes.
so I think the profitability is when they have a patient on the chair and they're treating the chair, the patient sitting there, versus when they are filling up forms or communicating with labs or back office or chatting with the practice managers on things that haven't been received on the lab work. So I think that's where I'm kind of trying to go to, is that that's where they're not being optimized. And I think we don't talk much about this, but on an average, our understanding is that a dentist is spending 3.5 days clinical and 1.5 days on admin tasks as well. So you work with so many clients, Shishir. So what's your understanding of how many days they are working and why they're not fully optimizing their work week?
So I'll tell you what happened. It's one of my one-to-one clients. I had a call with him yesterday evening, and they're based in Scotland. They're doing just shy of like 800,000. They're growing around 20% year on year, year on year. And now it's like it's absolutely mad for you not to have a practice manager right now. And I said, like, what's the going rate in that area for a practice manager? Well, anything between 30 and 40,000 CC. Like, let's call it 35,000. So add the influence now, in NI element into that one, add 15%. So that then you divide that by 12. So if I make maths, it's like 3,300 something a month. And so like, well, if you that's something like 160 something a day. You don't mad for you to not have just to have one person. You can pay £160 a day. You can have a day back to yourself. And let me check your hourly rate from based in clinical terms. And your rate is like 315 an hour. So would it make sense for you to give away like £134 and get back £315? Does it make sense? And yes, it does.
Yeah, and I think people don't think, because everyone is so busy on their day-to-day side of things, that they don't think about like taking a step back and actually evaluating. And I think there's a phrase called, the penny wise and pound foolish, is that you're trying to save that penny, but you're losing out on that earning that pound.
Yes.
So I think, yeah.
Yes. And also, yeah. Yeah, sorry. Also on this one is some people are not motivated by money, Nipun, on this aspect. Some people want to have some kind of level of control. They want to feel that it's my baby. I want to be in control of that. If I let go of a few things that I feel like I don't have control of, it's a bit like a mindset shift.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're playing your part on kind of creating more awareness and motivating them to think in the right direction. So, Shishir, let's talk about. I think one of the things that we have spoken about in the past is how fragmented different systems are, and I think we did touch on this at the beginning of this episode as well,
Mm.
because there's so many systems at play here. And I think we have spoken about that from our side, from Smile Genius, connecting the lab side, the communication, bringing that cost element, having clarity and accuracy on that cost side of things. And on your side, in terms of the accounting, showing where the numbers, giving them the insights where the profitability would be, and replacing the need for relying on the admin side of things. The systems can play a huge amount of role. And then the dentists are also thinking about what PMS systems I need to buy, what scanners I need to buy. So I think let's paint the picture for that it
Yes.
is still fragmented. There's so many systems, tools out there, and what's missing is one single voice on those things, right?
Yes. So I call this more like a, you know, six tools plus a human API. Let me explain what I mean by this, Nipun. Like, so first you have the PMS, okay? The use of the big four, like, and the Dentally, SOE, R4, in K-Stack, and Pearl, and like that. Then you have the imaging software, like, then you have a lab portal, then you have accounting system, and then you have the payroll and card processing thing, and card processing, and the sixth one is the payroll. And on top of that, and I add a practice manager saying at the seventh system, like which manual sleep, and he or she is trying to come up with a solution to have uh, okay, how do I connect all these dots from all these fragmented systems? And this is where this the data being siloed, and the fragment system that I see that it's happening.
And Shishir, do you see that? Like, I'm just trying to understand that if the dental group or the clinic owners, they're not paying attention to this, can this business not grow, and they might be forced to sell it at a lesser valuation? So it might be negative if they don't pay attention and fix these things, and they could go bankrupt, or may have to sell at a very low valuation. So again, goes against the agenda of why did I actually start the practice at the first place. So these things do come into play when they're selling the practices.
Oh yes, there are a couple of things that I would like to touch upon here. The number one is the day-to-day running of the business aspect. The second one is obviously the valuation. I wouldn't go far as being a bankrupt and this like that depends on so many factors and so many factors. But yes, without having proper data in place, data does not lie. Uh, and that can lead to that situation, but not necessarily. But the biggest thing that I would like to touch upon is on the immediate needs, funding needs, immediately profitability of the business. For example, clinic what happens today, app will come after 3 weeks, and the associate pay needs to be paid at the month end. The patient may be paying by installments. It's like Invisalign treatment, something like that. And now, what you can pay to associate, what you can't pay the associate, because there might also be, redoing of the work might be, retreatment might also happen. There might be unnecessary clawback, clawback. So if they're not visible on this aspect, then you're literally leaving the money on the table. Seriously, that's the first thing. And the second thing is obviously when you're selling your dental practice, one thing that the buyer will look at is how systemized is the dental practice. Is it run by you or is it run by systems? So if you run by you, it's different multiple. Whereas if you is run by systems, it's different multiple. And one
And
of the
what's
things
the
that we
difference, Shishir, in the multiples? Like, if you just average example, right? What multiples, how different it could be? Let's say it could be, let's say if my revenue is 1 million for a year, and I'm assuming, let's assume EBITDA of, I don't know, 200, 300,000.
so it's if we
Yeah, let's go
okay,
with
so
that.
if we go by this example, say a million and EBITDA of 200,000, I take it that is like a normal EBITDA, and then from there we have to normalize in terms of adjusting into like personal drawings and what you've been paid as a minimum just to pay the less taxes and things like that. That needs to be normalized. And then we also pass it to sustainability test that say for example, Nipun, that I'm going to sell my practice to you, and the next day you realize that, well, actually you have two dental chairs that actually needs to be replaced. So that goes now 30, 30, 60,000. So that will take that will be further adjusted. I call this the sustainability test.
Mhm.
And then you have EBITDA, like a revised EBITDA, and then comes the further like on the multiple factors, and we're looking at things like the associate, like who are your top performers, and if your majority of income is coming from more than 30% is coming from a two associates, we have a problem here. Like if a contract is going to run out within 3 months or 6 months, we have a problem here. If you are a principal owner who's actually generating the most of the income, we have a problem here. If you are the ones who are making decisions, most of the decisions, not trusting the system to make the decision, we have a problem here. So then we start to degrade the multiples. I call this the from profitability point of profit, and what we do is we calculate the profit quality score, and based on that we also calculate the EBITDA multiples inequality as well. It is all this and we do this inside Denpulse as a EBITDA model. It's quite in depth, Nipun. That and you can start building scenarios and all that. But absolutely crucial to understand that when it comes to this, when it comes to calculating EBITDA, the systems and process is a crucial thing, because that is the one. It could be between 1 and 2% of easily
Difference.
difference.
Wow. Okay, and when you're talking about the multiples, like usually, like could there be difference in multiples as well? Like if let's say I'm very much like a pen and paper and Excel sheet operator, right? And someone who is fully integrated, everything is seamless. It's not dependent on the owner, but on the system which the new buyer can carry on without having any impact on leaving those people behind, or let's say if someone doesn't join or contract ends, like you mentioned. So what is that? Have you seen any examples of difference in the multiples happening because of this?
Yes, very recently, I had a client reach out to me. The valuation done by one of the valuation experts, and the company says, "Here, can you do my sanity check on this one? And where do you see this one?" And I suggested him that you need to work on reducing your associate dependency on few associates, and don't forget that the establishment and equipment and plays a huge part. And people forget, Nipun, also that the website itself, like uh, so like, well, you build the business since 2013 as of now, and your valuation of your website is £1. That's crazy, like, and that's crazy. Where people are spending and building site and selling site for so much money, like your website valuation was £1. You need to work on that. So yeah, these are all the drivers. There's no like right fixed thing that we can take here. There's so many aspects that we
Mhm.
look at, and we pass this sustainability test, and we start building scenarios like a sliding sliders, Nipun. And so based on that, so you get information like, well, this is what evaluation would look like, based on what you have today. This thing that you can work on.
So it's always good to have systems and processes in place and assets in a way that are not dependent on contracts that will run out and people that may leave and not perform as well. So again, that's where you can get more profitable and get more return on your investment when you're selling your practice or group of practices.
Yes, absolutely. I think systems and process, and in general we talk about this a lot in system and processes, but we really need to go into much deeper level, like what exactly is the system, like how it is operated, how does this work, like how this work, and what decision are you making today. And one thing that we run with the clients is in Nipun is that we say, like, I call this the Friday OPM test. What it means is like, so if you're looking at something, a dashboard or whatever, and it doesn't tell you what you need to do on Monday,
Yeah.
you really have a system problem. You don't have a data problem.
That's true. That's true. Because I think we talk about that internally as well. That, one of the things in a dental practice from our clinical side and operational side of things is that the dentists, we know that the dentists don't work every day. So they're working 3 days, 4 days, maybe they're taking Fridays off. Now, the a lot of times dentists don't know which patient will be on chair Monday morning at 9 a.m. So the reception is managing that, or the practice manager may know or may not know, but the reception knows it and they would have forgotten. Now, the practice manager is managing the lab work. Now, they don't know Friday whether the lab work has arrived or is it stuck at customs because of Brexit. A lot of European labs are not able to send it. And Monday morning, 9 a.m., the patient is sitting on the chair, and it's more reactionary that the dentist goes to the reception. Where's my lab work? Or they are not able to check things on a Friday, 4 p.m. The Friday, 4 p.m. test that you're talking about, right? Before leaving the practice, before the weekend, they don't know. Even at home, right? They don't know if they want to check in. And that's where it's very much fragmented. It's very reactionary. It affects the brand of the clinic as well. The patient may not come back if they don't trust that the systems are in place. And I think that a lot of times we have seen that the 4 p.m. test fails because and people are just it's all dependent on people, memory, and local tools that they're using to capture information.
Yes, absolutely. I would highly recommend to invest in technology that can actually for a few hundred quids a month, and it's absolutely no brainer to not have the system process in place. Like in that tells you like the lab work has arrived. Like patient need due on Monday, it's all good. Practice that let's go tick 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 tick. That's all good stuff. Like Monday is covered. Tuesday is another day, and I'll fight for it. But Mondays is absolutely I've done what I can do. That's yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. So I think, Shishir, to wrap up this, and I think let's talk about what we spoke about, the ideal flow, how it should be for the practices, the small to medium sized data groups that we have been speaking to a lot. And again, I'll take a first stab at that, and then maybe you can add your kind of layers and flavors to it. But how we see it and what we have spoken to you before is from Smile Genius side of things is that there's a clinical aspect to the workflow, there is an operational aspect to the workflow, and then it ends up being a financial part of the workflow. So what I mean is the clinical is capturing the source of information, which is the treatments, the lab orders. It goes into operational, what we talked about, the shipping, logistics, communication with the lab and the team. And then it gets transferred at the end of the month in terms of the expenses or the deductions for a dentist for the associate pay purposes. From there on, it becomes more of the accounting and business profitability levers kick in and where you come into place as well. So, again, that's how we see all these three today are very fragmented. They're happening on hardwares and the softwares that they're providing when it comes to clinical or notebooks that the dentists are keeping or practice management systems. Operational is happening on WhatsApp, memory based Excel sheets, physical dockets. Financial is happening on Zero or through people in terms of account management. And the systems are not talking to each other. So, Shishir, take it over. I think, what do you think is the problem? And is there anything that I'm missing out here?
And I think you've touched on like at the right level, in the right way, Nipun. That clinical, operational, and financial. That is the flow of the data. And I always say that data, does not happen in isolation. It is not produced in a vacuum. It is a result of a commercial decision has taken place. So when the lab work, a patient comes and say a treatment needs to be performed, associate go to some portal, say I prefer this supplier from this thing, and they can order from somewhere, and I get it. And that thing is whole thing, everything being tracked. And when the lab work has arrived, and someone can and approve the invoice and saying it has indeed arrived at the right level, the right price, etc., etc. That can be paid. So yeah, if there's something or a system that can design the workflow, that would be great. And I'll go one step deeper here, Nipun, that ideally, if there is like a one patient, one treatment, one financial day throughout like a workflow, that will be fantastic because you're tracking everything. When the treatment is like patient said yes to the treatment and the pricing is what is the pricing? It's the material cost, lab cost, associate cost, and the operating cost, so that you can working out the profitability by treatment for that associate on a real time basis, as I was saying, and then it is ordered, and some kind of software tools like yours, and then you can track all the way through, all the way through when it's delivered, and an invoice is created. You snap it through OCR or something. You can do that, like that, and the lab bills come to practice managers, and they see that yeah, it has arrived, and a ping, a message goes to the associate saying, and it's like, it's good for Monday to do the treatment, and you get passed to the accounting system, finance software, and everything is taken care of. Yes, but I would like to see like one treatment, one patient, whole journey in one go. That would be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, and thanks. And I know that Denpulse is playing a huge role in solving that problem on the financial vertical as well. And I think we have discussed working together in terms of providing that unified layer to these practices and kind of micro to small DSOs, dental groups as well, because I think it's a common problem that everyone is facing as well. So I think it would be ideal for them to have just one kind of point of system where they can just see everything, and then if they want to log in and do more financial side of things, they have other systems at play, but they're not looking at 10 different systems and memory based, the human API that you were talking about.
Yes, and absolutely makes sense. I think like it's sacred convenience. Like you log into one portal and you see things like end to end of everything about that patient, that treatment. Because as a clinician, as a business owner, they don't think about like accounts, and they don't think like a bill. They care about who is the patient, what treatment being done by whom. Am I doing the treatment? Is my associate doing the treatment? Who is doing the treatment? And is is it being taken care of like properly? Like, is it patient care is at the highest level? That's the thing that he or she is taking is care about, and we can facilitate to do that for them, and as well as saying, well, when the work does happen, patient care is done. You also self care is also important. Like how are you getting paid? Because the business is your vehicle to get paid, to fund your personal lifestyle, provide for the family. You also have a responsibility to yourself as a business owner. So also, so the finances are also taken care of in like one unified way, so that it gives them like huh, it takes a lot of weight off the shoulders. Like I don't have to do so many things.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's so busy as well. Like I think everyone, business owners especially, there's so many distractions, so many things that they need that needs their attention. And if you give them that 1 or 2 days in a work week or a couple of hours in a work week, I think that's a huge where they can focus on things that matter to them and not catching up on data and admin tasks as well.
Yes, and even one thing that I've noticed over the years is increasing like take home pay, increasing the profit of the business, production, all that's good. What I found the most valuable they crave for is the time. If you can reduce them the time back, say from 5 days to 3.5 days, and from 4 days to like 3 days, they will absolutely love you. Absolutely love you. And there are things like money can buy, money can't buy.
That's very true,
Yeah.
and I think time is something that everyone is short of. And if we want to do more, time is always the limiting factor that doesn't allow us to do more. But Shishir, thank you for your time. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, insights, your experience, and the examples that you shared. We hope to do more sessions like these in the future as well, maybe attacking one area where we can talk more in details. But yeah, thanks for your time and being kind of flexible with the schedule and helping us with this episode as well.
Well, thanks, Deepan, for having me, and pleasure being here.
Great, thanks.